Hi, thank you for joining me today. My name is Dan, and I'm going to read a chapter in my new book, but I thought it'd be fun to take just a quick minute to talk about music. I have been called, and I guess I started calling myself now, a multi-instrumentalist. I play, depending how thin you slice it, like if you play a tenor sax, does playing a soprano sax count as a different instrument? That's a good question. Trumpet, flugelhorn? Good question. Well, if you slice it really thick, I play about 8 to 10 instruments. If you slice it really thin, I play nearly 20 instruments. There's a lot of things you can learn about life by learning instruments, and I'll attach this document to the description below. And by the way, if you are not a musician, you probably shouldn't say, well, maybe I'm supposed to play many. No, you're supposed to play one. Well, in fact, that's one of the lines here. Keep your main instrument, and let the new ones, the new instruments that you're bad at, come up to a certain level. Don't make your main instrument go down to a certain level. In fact, bullet point number 1 I have here is be willing to make bad and terrible sounds, even though bullet point number 2 is learn how to create good sounds, a good single sound. Let me pick up a flute for a minute, and I'm not very good at a flute. But with a little reverb on the microphone, I sound pretty good. There's so many different things you can do in a flute. You go this way, this way, this way, this way, mouth up, mouth down, jaw open, jaw closed. It's really the same on all instruments, except it's different on every instrument. You know what's funny about the harmonica? Those of us who play it, we call it, by the way, a harp, not a harmonica. Those of us who play the harp, it's the only instrument where you actually inhale the music. The instrument I play the most is a trumpet. There, just a little bit of showing off. Good enough. That's enough about multi-instrumentalism. I think I just made up that word. Let's get on to reading our book. Chapter 3, Scene 2. If this is your first chapter in this book, don't start here. Well, you can if you want to. But in this chapter, I'm having a follow-up conversation with King David. That's all I'm going to say. Chapter 3, Scene 2, David's Questions. Plowing upstairs and over moonlit pavement, ducking through doorways, guards brushed aside, we turn into a firelit room with carpets on the walls and overstuffed couches piled high with oriental cushions. David throws himself onto a couch and gestures for us to follow. He sits forward, plants his elbows on his knees, and drills into our souls with eyes like Iron Age daggers. So what do you know about my Mama Rute? His question hangs in the air. He tilts his head and squints. Have you traveled there, too? It had never dawned on me that traipsing around the heavens, visiting with the cloud of witnesses, interviewing saints, and zipping across space and time would bother anybody. I'd never thought about asking for permission. Perhaps I had missed some classroom instruction. Well, yes, I guess you could say that, I answer, raising an eyebrow and hoping I looked humble. David leans back, the muscles of his jaw working ripples in his temple, the fingers of his right hand beating out a silent rhythm on his knee. We know that people like you sometimes come here to see what we're doing. David frowns and stares up into a corner of the room. Me, my chief musicians, and I go into the heavens often. That's where most of our songs come from. We never thought about going back and visiting our fathers or mothers. The king takes a deep breath and scratches his forehead. This is an interesting thing you are doing. Whew, I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until that moment. I exhale through puffed cheeks. Only then does David realize I was nervous, He laughs and slaps our knees. No, no, you are not in trouble. It's just a big surprise. So, do many in your day do this? Do what you were doing? Go back and talk to the fathers and mothers? Or visit us? He circles one hand in the air. We chuckle and shake our heads. Not too many, I say. More than in the past. It's a secret many have discovered in recent years. I'm still a beginner. Not so much a beginner, I would think, David retorts. You talked with Mama Rute? Really? More like observed her. And you. David sits at full attention again. You saw me too? I shrug. Well, yes, Mama Rute was telling you her story. Ha ha! Hiccupot! David roars, raising one hand in a grand gesture and laughing. Yes, that one, I add as he stops laughing. Her story about the glory. Then you know where all this has come from. He waves toward the door in the amphitheater beyond. You know very well who ignited the passion of my life. I will never forget Mama Rute and her glory. I hope she sees what we're doing. She would be pleased. I'm quite sure she sees, I say. All the people who experienced the glory of Shiloh were changed, David says, even damaged. It was not easy for them. They would gather together for decades afterward and relive those days. You know what that's like. It's good for a while, but it can slide into deep sadness, hoping against hope that the Lord Jehovah will do it again. It gets very old. Many died with shredded hearts. Some, not most, but many, fared better. They began to see that the presence of the Lord was not only a pillar of fire. They learned how to kindle pillars in their own souls and in their homes. This was Mama Rute. She had an advantage, of course. She came from a foreign land. She could see the way the God of Israel worked. She was never as bound up by the law. Her Boaz, her kindred redeemer, set her on a good path to perceive the goodness of our God. She also saw something in the person and obedience of little Samuel. Did you know that he slept in the tent in Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant was? David slaps his knee and laughs again. Right in there with the Ark of God. He wiggles his hand like a snake sneaking through the grass. That should have shown everyone that some of God's more thunderous rules weren't really to be taken as the last word on the subject. Mama Rute never lost her Moabite style. Some say even I have it. David shakes his head and sighs. She was always an outsider. This was very painful for her. But she saw the same in me. That's why she loved me. She shared her secrets with me. She was often not very happy with her grandson Jesse, and even less with his sons, my half-brothers. That's why I was sent to watch the sheep, of course, but I didn't mind that much. The sheep were friendly and never hit me or called me nasty names. It was easier living in the pasture by myself than in a house with 7 angry brothers. And it was out watching sheep where I started singing and playing the harp. Yes, I interrupt. Your dad told me about that. He said people from Bethlehem used to sneak out and spy on you just so they could hear you sing. David stopped smiling on the spot. Oops, I mumble. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Have you talked to everybody? He says with a wince. No, just those 2, I think. Mama Rute and Papa Jesse. David's face is still twisted into a grimace as he shakes his head. Well, I'm glad I didn't know those people were listening, but as I sang, I began to have more and more times of friendship with Jehovah. It seemed that sometimes I could just about see that pillar of cloud and that pillar of fire standing in the valley above my sheep. I was as surprised as anybody that day when my brothers came running out into the woods, yelling their heads off. Come here, David! Come here, David! Come, come! The prophet Samuel wants to see you. I couldn't even imagine what they were talking about, and the name Samuel frankly sent chills to the very bottom of my little hairless toes. The 3 of us scrambled back into town and rushed up into the courtyard outside Papa's house. It was Samuel, all right, an old man with long gray beard and a long gray face. But when he looked at me, his face lit up. He lifted both hands and shouted, "Yes, this is the one!" And before I knew what was happening, he poured an entire horn of oil over my head and announced that I was the king of his... David stopped mid-sentence. I was speechless. We were all speechless. Anger and astonishment shot out from the eyes of my 7 brothers. They wisely kept their mouths shut. You pretty much know the rest of the story. Years and years of running from poor, mad King Saul, running for my life, killing the giant. Everything in those days was turvy-topsy. Is that how you say it? I didn't know what I was doing, but my sessions with Mama Hute had prepared me for standing alone. And when the whole world was dark, I kept dreaming about the light of God. I determined that if and when I truly became king, the first thing I would do is fetch that Ark of the Covenant from Kiriath Jearim and see if we could get the glory to show up again. I thought long and hard about the example of little Samuel, of his sleeping with the Ark of the Covenant, of his difficult and sacrificial obedience. Indeed, God did not strike him dead, and I can only conclude that it was those 2 things that kept the Lord from carrying out his dreadful promises: innocent, intimate worship and costly, sacrificial obedience. I began to imagine what that might look like in my own life and time. I wasn't sure that it would work, but I was willing to give it a try. You've seen the end result. Worship, 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 and give, give, give. The first time we pulled back the curtains from the Ark of the Covenant, we only invited a handful of people, selected for their godliness and humility, and a handful of musicians and dancers. If God was going to kill everybody, I wanted it to be a small number. But the curtains went back, and nobody died. We worshipped and sang and danced with all our might. I'm not sure we saw any glow or cloud that first time, but we certainly had a glow in our hearts. That was enough to keep us going. We'd been worshiping for 3 months, night and day, before anyone saw the first glimmer. True, it wasn't a column of fire, but it was a glow, and that was enough. It was the middle of the night. I was asleep in bed. I had given everyone clear instructions that if the glory ever came and appeared, they were to come and pound on my door till I was awake. I threw on my robe and slippers and ran out the door and down the hill to the pavilion. This was way before we built the big one you saw tonight. It was about the beginning of the 3rd watch, the very darkest hour of the night. And there, right above the mercy seat, was a pale blue cloud. It seemed to pulsate with the music. We fell on our faces, but the musicians kept playing and the dancers kept dancing. And nobody died! David threw up his hands in a giant V and laughed. That is all I live for, to see the glory of the Lord, the beauty of the Lord, and the beautiful things that come with it. You'll tell the people, your people, you all must live in the glory all the time by now. I wish I could see it. We shuffle our feet and clear our throats and look at the floor. What? David asks. Do you not see the glory all the time? We shake our heads. David lifts one palm and leans forward. What are you doing?